Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, retired librarian turned homeschool mom. In this video, and hopefully the sounds okay, I just got a new camera recently. This is being filmed on the 25th of September, and my built-in camera went kaput, and I kind of messed with the volume. My last couple of videos that were filmed yesterday on the 24th, which are Black History Month, and then a early January video kind of sounded echoey. So I've turned the mic down, volume down. Okay, hopefully this works. We messed around with it. So this is the beginning of this. So this is The Road to Avonlea, the first season. This was created by Kevin Sullivan, who did create the films that I have recently covered of Anne of Green Gables, and the sequel, and the continuing story. Now, this is set after Anne the sequel, and Anne is not here. You never see, as far as I know, Megan Fellows never shows up here. Now, a couple of actors do pop up in here that are very similar, because again, this is a Kevin Sullivan production. These are based very loosely, particularly as you get into further seasons, on some of LM Montgomery's short stories, particularly the Storytime Girl, which is where you get the main character that you see on the front, which is Sarah Stanley, which is played by Sarah Polley, who is, I think, here through the first season. And then I'm going to jump in here at the IMDb page, just kind of give you a cast of characters, particularly for this first season. So, obviously, you have Sarah Stanley, who is played by Sarah Polley. And she is, and this will explain it a little bit more, because this all revolves around the King family. She is the only daughter of the youngest King sister, who died of tuberculosis in Montreal. And Sarah is there because her father's gotten into some legal trouble, and he sent her to live with what he was expecting was her uncle Alec King and his wife Janet and their 3 children. Their eldest daughter, Felicity. Now, we'll get back to this, the actors. Alec King is played by Cedric Smith. His wife is played by Lally, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Cadeau. These guys are pretty much through the entire season. And then their eldest daughter, Felicity King, who's played by Gema, I'm not going to pronounce that, Zamprogna. And she's again through the entire season. Their son Felix King, played by Zachary Bennett, you see him through the entire show as well. And then their youngest daughter, Cicely King, who is only there through 94, so through I think 6 seasons. She's played by Hilary Cramp. So that's their 3 children. Now Sarah ends up living with her aunt Hetty King, who's the eldest, who despises Sarah's father. That's played by Jackie Burroughs. And she's there until season, I think it looks like, season 6. I do believe Sarah Polley pops in a couple times in the last few seasons. The other main character is I think the second youngest sister, Olivia King, and then she gets married later, but not in the season, played by Meg Ruffman. And then the couple other main characters, let me see if I can pull in here, at least from this season. You do see Patricia Hamilton, who plays Rachel Lynde. She played Rachel Lynde in the Anne films. As well as, let's see if it's going to show me the entire cast, and it's not. But Again, you have some recurring. You actually do see the actress who played Morella Cuthbert in here. She does die at some point, though not in this season. So, all right, let us get on with these. Before I get into a little background, this is the first time I watched these since they came out. This is either one called The Road to Avonlea or Avonlea, depending. It was shown on Disney in the US in the 90s. So this ran, let me double check the seasons, to 96. So it ran for a full 7 seasons. So from 1990 to 96. So when I was a kid, and it ran on Disney. So, but let's kind of get through this. There are, how many episodes are in the first season here? Rolling down. 13. So the first, and these are, there's a couple of these that definitely connect to the short stories. Once you get out of season 1, yeah. So the first season is The Journey Begins. And again, this is where Sarah, who's 10, her father he's well off. And so I wouldn't say she's spoiled. She has a nanny. But her father's getting into some embezzlement problems. He'd been away. And so he decides to send her off with her nanny to live with, as I said, what he thinks is going to be his brother-in-law, rather than his older sister-in-law, who despises him, who blames him for his wife's death and her dying of tuberculosis and stuff like that. So Sarah gets there, basically. Her nanny is eventually kicked out. It's that bad. She does find out what is going on with her father. And he says, you can go back. He's on house arrest. So it's investigating at the time. So, and just kind of her getting used to her living on the island and her deciding to stay. Because she does actually learn to love her Aunt Hetty, who is the school teacher, and her cousins. And so her cousin Felicity is not particularly fond of her, and it's kind of the beginning there where they're getting used to each other. The second story is The Story Girl Earns Her Name. So this is loosely based on the short story, which I have not read yet, which is The Story Girl. And this is where I believe you meet Jasper Dale, who becomes a major character. He actually eventually, in one season or another, marries Olivia, possibly in season 2. So this is where basically Jasper's a recluse photographer who stutters. So he's kind of made fun of. He's a grown adult. They're trying to raise money for books for the new library. So, and after the swindler runs off with everything. So they have to find out the funds. So it's kind of an interesting story. Yawning. It's almost 8:30 at night. So then you have the next story is The Quarantine at Alexander Abrams. So basically what happens here is the children are messing around with a recluse by the name of Alexander Abram, who's apparently this most disagreeable man. Sarah and Felix get into their house, and there's a smallpox, only he's been exposed to smallpox. And then Rachel Lynn gets involved. So Rachel Lynn, Felix, Sarah, and Alexander Abram are all stuck in his house under quarantine for a couple weeks. And Sarah's a bit of a matchmaker and wants people to be nice to one another. So she's very much she looks on the bright side of everything. So the next one is The Materializing of Duncan McTavish. This, I believe, this has to do with, this is always weird. And I found this is where you see Marilla and Rachel Lynn together. And I'm going to be honest, I don't like how he portrays Rachel Lynn in this first series. She's a busybody in the books, but she's not nasty. And in these couple of ones with her and Marilla. She's definitely shown of as nasty, and it just doesn't fit. And I also do not like the way they portray Marilla in this, where basically Marilla's pretending to have a boyfriend. Remember, this is an older woman who's raised a child at this point. I have no idea where Anne is, whether she's in school or not, where this is taking place. But nonetheless, it's just kind of a weird thing. Very, very sorry. Okay, next, Old Lady Lloyd. And this is where, this is episode 5. I think what this is. But I'm staring at the episode because, again, I watched these in a couple of different things, so I don't remember each episode very well. But again, all the episodes are very episodic. And this actually has to do with an old friend of Olivia's, by the name of Sylvia Gray, and getting her. She's a singer, and she has to get her confidence. Episode 6 is Proof in the Pudding. This is a very kind of funny episode. Felicity, who's the oldest, the know-it-all, the perfectionist, is put in charge of the children. And yeah, her attitude just kind of, you can figure out how that happens, what goes on there. So yeah, there's a lot of learning in there. The episode 7 is Conversations. This has to do with the Witch of Avonlea. And basically she helps with children who have influenza, and that's the Witch of Avonlea. But basically has to do with the people attending church. For some reason, I don't remember watching this episode, which is odd. Let me pull this out. Is this going to show me? Yeah, I don't know. I swear there's a couple. I don't remember this episode very well. Moving on. Aunt Abigail's Beau, which has to do with Janet's sister. So this is Sarah's aunt, who she's not related to, her uncle's wife, her Aunt Janet, which I always found funny as a child because that is, in fact, my mother's first name. And her old love, and no, there's Spencer. We would not consider her a spinster. She's probably in her 20s, maybe early 30s. Her old love comes back, and she has to be convinced to stay with him because he earned a bunch of money in the gold rush. Moving on. This actually, Malcolm and the baby, this is connected to them, where a former student teacher of Hattie's and her husband die, and they leave a child. And then Hetty and Rachel Lynn battle over the child, and Sarah and Felicity take the child and give it to Malcolm and the now married Malcolm and Abigail. And eventually they learn they are happy with the child, and the child is left with them. And then we have Felicity's Challenge. And this is episode 10. This is very much a Mean Girls episode, where Felicity, there are 2 other girls in her class. She tries to dress up her friend Clemmy, who's kind of short and stout and stutters. She's basically the girl who's picked on, and tries to make a pretty girl out of her and messes everything up. And then you have the Witch of Avonlea, which is a episode that focuses on Felix, where he gets stuck in a snowstorm on his way home, and gets into the house of what's considered the Witch of Avonlea, and she helps him. And at the time, they're competing in a spelling bee, and she convinces him that this magic thing she gave him will make him win the spelling bee, which he does. But again, at the end, she tells him, it's like, I just gave you confidence. That's it. And then the next episode's kind of interesting. This is the blue chest of Arabella King, where their aunt, this is the parents' aunt, dies, and she finally tells them she can open up the blue chest they have in the attic and gives them the key. And it's a matter of what the heck is in here, and they end up finding, I think, a bunch of money. So it's an interesting mystery. And then Nothing Endures But Change. This is episode 13. So this is when Blair Stanley comes back. The trial's concluded. He's been acquitted. But his business has to be rebuilt. He has a lot of work to do. He wants to take Sarah back home. You see him and Hattie bumping heads. Remember, this is almost a year later. It's at least a bare minimum of 6 months. So, I believe, yeah, because it's not winter. And basically, Sarah ends up getting hurt. She doesn't really want to leave. She doesn't like the fact that her father and Hetty are fighting because she loves them both. And Olivia also, there's a big thing with Olivia in here where she learns to stand up to her sister and she yells at Hetty. And she's actually falling in love with Jasper Dale at this point. And Sarah falls and hurts herself, and eventually him and Hattie reconcile, and again Olivia's falling in love with Jasper Dale. And she's still worried about losing her baby sister, because Hetty has a problem with everybody leaving her, because she was very close to Sarah's mother, and then Sarah's mother left for Montreal, which is decently far away, obviously, particularly even this time. I mean, Montreal's not close to Prince Edward Island, and it is actually very interesting because technically they would be speaking French. Nonetheless, Montreal's you definitely speaks French, nonetheless. But and she's afraid she's going to lose Olivia, and Sarah. So she has some abandonment issues. You see a lot of Hetty's abandonment issues here. And that's where it ends. And Sarah's going to go back, at least briefly, with her father. So that's the end of the first season here. And this series is near and dear to my heart, because again, I watched it when I was young. I have a lot of memories of me and my big sister there. And no, she's not dead. It's just, we're sisters. And yes, we fought like crazy. There's a 2-year age difference. So, but nonetheless, they're very, very fond childhood memories of mine. And yes, they do stand up. This is very historical fiction. And they're obviously they're episodic because they're episodes. And they all have a closing on. They do build on each other to an extent of this family and things changing. So as the characters grow. And it is very interesting, but the children act like children. And they're having fun. There's always a lesson to be learned at the end of this, at the end of each episode. So why it's not cliche, you always see, things always turn out well at the end. There's always a happy ending. As far as I know, I can't remember if there's any cliffhangers in this series or not. Again, it's been a very, very long time. So that is the end of this video. Hopefully this sounds better. We've gotten the sound thing figured out. But my only comment is I do not really like how Rachel Lynde and Morella Cuthbert are portrayed in this. Maybe it's because now that I've read the books, it's different. I've come to know these characters. Rachel Lynde is very much portrayed in a negative light in many cases, as in some cases is Morella. It doesn't fit the aesthetic I get from the books. And again, it feels weird to see these characters without Megan Fellows playing Anne Shirley, who, again, in normal universes, she's not even mentioned, which is very, very it feels weird. I can see why on Earth maybe the actress didn't want to come back at this time. She does eventually, for Anne, the continuing story. But it seems strange that she's not even brought up at all. And then, of course, in the books, in my mind, you have Morella, along with Rachel Lynde, are actually raising a pair of twins around this time. This is when they would be raising the twins, who would be getting older. And it feels very strange. But, of course, he didn't include the twins in the films, so it's understandable that they're not there. But still, it's like the character development of Morella Cuthbert doesn't exist. It's almost as if Anne never existed. And again, you don't see Diana Barry and her family at all, which would be very, very weird, particularly since her younger sister would have been the older in the class. This one-room schoolhouse seems too small, and you don't see, I remember if Cicely's in the class or not. You don't see the wide range of children that I think you should. I mean, I can understand because this is a television show. You don't want to have a bunch of kids in there, and particularly little ones. But again, as you would know, in a one-room schoolhouse, you're going to have everybody from like 5-6 year-olds up to 16-year-olds, and it doesn't. That's just kind of my historical complaint here. That's my little historical rant on this. So, again, that's the end of this. Again, hopefully the volume and my background noise is okay on here. So, if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. I have covered all 4 Sullivan films. No, I'm not going to recommend Anne, A New Beginning. I did review it. You can check out my review of that. It's really, really weird. I like the 3 other ones, though they're not really, particularly once you get into the second and third, they're not connected to the books. Yes, am covering the books. By the time you guys see this, believe I'll have covered at least the first 4. Yeah, probably the first 5. So we would have Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, Anne of the Island, Anne's House of Dreams. So you guys would have had, this would be corresponding with Anne of Ingleside. So the next ones that are going to be coming are Rainbow Valley and Rilla of Ingleside. So those will be the books incoming in this series, and then I'll be actually moving into the short stories after that, once I finish the rest of the Anne books. So, and then once that is done, we are doing the Boxcar Children and then Rings of Fire. So, that is what is upcoming. And I have no idea what month this is popping up in. But, media size, I did cover Black History Month in February. March is Women's History Month. April we're covering, which may be when this is popping up, the Titanic. I'm doing Asian history in Angel Island in May, Ellis Island in June, food in July, women's inventors in August. I'm doing a deep dive into Beauty and the Beast in September. You want to know what that's going to look like? Check out my Cinderella playlist, because I've already done a deep dive into that fairy tale. October, I'm doing space. I ran out of spooky stuff. Maybe we'll get back to that next year. And then November, due to running out of Native American stuff, there's just not a lot of stuff there. We're doing the Hindu festival of Diwali, and then I'm doing mysteries in December. So that's what to look forward to. And hopefully, coming probably September, August, we will start reviewing some actual homeschooling stuff, because that's really when we're going to start. We'll start with kindergarten with my daughter. So, again, like and subscribe, leave a positive comment, and look forward to more stuff. Thank you.